After multiple properties in Aurora and Denver were deemed unlivable, hundreds of people had to find a new place to live. There were bug infestations and mold, issues with water and heat, overflowing dumpsters. The list goes on and on. Problems with those properties, all owned by CBZ management, made us wonder if this was a broader issue. Your reporter Kelly Werthmann takes us behind the story.
Sitting in the sun in her inviting backyard, Lindsay Wanek finds joy in calling Aurora home for the past 8 years.
Moved out here because I like diverse communities.
Yay! Yet the last several months haven't been so joyful due to a troubling house next door.
And people started coming and going, and we could not figure out who was living there.
That uncertainty put Lindsay on edge, and it became worse, she says, when she consistently heard loud music and saw strange behavior in her neighbor's backyard.
At one point, I poked my head over the fence to ask them to turn down the music, and I saw all these cars back there and people working on them. And I was like, this is weird.
Lindsay snapped these photos showing multiple cars lined up in the backyard, as well as a number of them being worked on out front. Knowing it was a rental property, she tried reaching out to the landlord in hopes of getting answers.
I called him twice, and he just was like, there's not an issue there.
But to Lindsay and many of her other neighbors, she says, those vehicles weren't the only issue.
This was all garbage.
From mounds of trash and debris to a more than busted fence.
Yeah.
Problems kept piling up.
There were car registrations, like all over the alley. So I was like, okay, something is not right.
So Lindsay took action again, reaching out to the landlord, city council, even Aurora police.
I tried everything I possibly could, and then I saw your article.
She's referring to our story about Aurora's code enforcement team, encouraging residents to reach out if they have concerns about problem rental homes in the city. Lindsay did just that, and within a couple days, code enforcement officers showed up and cited the landlord for numerous violations, including not removing trash, unlawful vehicles, and unlawful outdoor storage. Turns out the city has labeled the house next door as a chronic violator property. Our open records request revealed dozens of citations over the past 10 years, and now a court summons issued to the landlord. He doesn't just own this home, but 8 other rental properties in this area, and they too have a lengthy history of violating city code.
I tell you what, these people are crazy.
Andrus Berzins is the owner and landlord, and much like he told Lindsay by phone, he doesn't see an issue with his properties. You don't see a problem?
I don't see a problem. I mean, you know, that the problem is the code enforcement. I mean, you know, they can come over here and they see a piece of paper on there and they just give me trash.
Berzin says his numerous citations for failure to keep property free of litter, failure to maintain building and equipment, and other use regulation violations over the years are because he's become an unfair target of code enforcement.
They decided that I am no good.
According to public property records, more than 50 different people have rented this 3-bedroom, 800-square-foot house since Andrus Berzins purchased it in 2008. He claims the last person who lived there unexpectedly moved out in the past 6 months and allowed squatters to move in. So you weren't keeping track of who was living in your home?
I didn't know.
Do you create leases for them to sign?
No.
Why not?
I don't need to.
He's got properties right across the street from elementary schools. And so our community is now at risk, and that's not fair.
Learning her neighboring homeowner doesn't keep track of his tenants, Lindsay decided to dig a little deeper into what's happening next door.
Oh, I found the property owner's spouse is running for city council. And on her website, she's advocating for safe neighborhoods and a safe community, which is really ironic.
Marcia Berzins, Andrus Berzins' wife, is a former Aurora City Council member and hopes to be elected again in November. While she's not a listed co-owner for this home, property records indicate she is co-owner of at least 3 other homes in Aurora that have been repeatedly cited by code enforcement. We reached out to her for an interview, but she declined, saying she has nothing to do with those rental properties.
What are the consequences for this? It seems like there doesn't seem like there's any.
We wondered the same thing and went back to Aurora's code enforcement office for answers.
A lot of times when we do see repeat offenders, we have the option of what's called a chronic violator property, and we can put them on that and then issue a summons going forth for repeat violations.
That's now what is happening to Andrus Burzins. He's due in court next month. King says some cases can take years to reach a summons.
It may look like, hey, we're not moving fast, but unfortunately, zoning cases take time.
King says, unfortunately, situations like this are not uncommon in Aurora.
Do you see the need for more enforcement or more regulation around rentals in Aurora?
That's a tough question. No one likes over enforcement of things, but again, we're always looking at stuff to help our community members, and maybe that does involve a different code being written or how we address things. I'm not opposed to change by any means. The world's evolving and we need to evolve with it.
And that change can't come soon enough for neighbors like Lindsay.
I think the system's broken.
And Kelly joins us now as we go behind the story. This story in particular has so many layers to it.
I was surprised by how many layers kept unfolding, if you will, when I first got that call or an email from Lindsay about this interesting house next door. You know, we kept digging into it, and thanks to her, she did a little bit of digging herself and finding out not only who the landlord is, but as you learned, who his wife is and some of the connections to the city, and then learning a bit more about all the different violations that not only he's been sided with, but that, you know, he either hasn't addressed or has addressed even at times over the last decade, but then the problem would persist. He would fix it and then it would pop up again. Fix it and then pop up again. So clearly something was a repeated behavior.
One of the things that stood out to me is that this is not only obviously maybe a problem with him and repeated behavior, but this type of problem is not necessarily uncommon.
Yeah, that's what Josh King told me. I asked him, I said, is this Burzin's landlord or his properties, is this an anomaly? And he said, unfortunately, it's not. They are seeing this type of issue with landlords and with properties that aren't properly maintained all across the city.
What can people like Lindsay do if they're in situations like this? Do they have any recourse?
Well, I mean, that was the question she had for me, right? I mean, when I first told the story back in April with another tenant of an apartment complex who was concerned about his rights, you know, in the city of Aurora, what they do, as I reported, is they have annual or every other year, they do check apartments, right? But when it comes to rental homes, they respond on a complaint basis, right? So people like Lindsay, neighbors, can file a complaint and then code enforcement can show up. Tenants can file a complaint and code enforcement can show up. The city of Aurora has 19 code enforcement officers. That may seem like a lot, but Aurora is a very large city, and as we've been reporting, there are some issues with a lot of properties, and so they're busy. But the best thing someone can do is file that complaint and see where it can go from there. But as we've also learned, it can take quite a bit of time for it to reach a court summons.
And Kelly, you found out about this story because Lindsay reached out to you.
Exactly. I heard from a lot of people, and I'm so glad that people were reaching out saying they also had questions or they had concerns about their landlord. And I'm so grateful to Lindsay because not only did she reach out, she was willing to go on camera. She was willing to show us what she's dealing with, and that really helps us. It's stories like this, being the visual medium that we are, right? And I want to hear from more of you. So if you have anything that you'd like to share, you can always reach out to me through our website. That's cbscolorado.com. We also have the Your Reporter email address. All you got to do is send an email to yourreporter@cbs.com. And of course, we have our tip line. All of that information is available on our website. And yes, I do want to hear from you.
Kelly, great reporting as always. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Michael.